She thought her shiny badge was a shield, proof she could bend the rules and walk away untouched. But the moment she locked eyes with him, she made a dangerous mistake. He wasn't just another target. He wasn't someone who would quietly disappear under the weight of false accusations. What she didn't know was that the fight she was about to start would tear open a truth the system had tried to bury for years. And when the dust settled, one question would remain: how many others had suffered before? Someone finally pushed back. Marcus Williams had spent most of his life keeping his head down and his record spotless, a former Army medic turned community health worker. He was the kind of man neighbors trusted, always ready to lend a hand, quick with a smile that hid years of quiet resilience. His days were predictable: early mornings at the clinic, afternoons visiting patients, and evenings walking the same quiet route home through his tree-lined neighborhood. It was a life built on discipline and routine, a fragile calm in a city where headlines told of injustice far too often. Marcus read those stories, shook his head, and hoped they'd never land at his doorstep. But sometimes trouble doesn't knock, it breaks the door down. That week, a storm was brewing in the form of an officer who believed her badge could rewrite the truth. She didn't know Marcus, not really. But soon, their lives would collide in a way that would test every limit of his patience, his freedom, and his faith in the system he once served. It started with the sound of tires crunching over gravel behind him. Marcus was heading home late after an extra shift, the weight of his medical bag pulling at his shoulder. At first he didn't think much of the slow-moving patrol car keeping pace with him. But then it stopped. The beam of a spotlight washed over his back, pinning him in place. He turned, confused, only to see Officer Karen Whitfield, stepping out, her badge glinting under the street lamp, her expression sharp and cold. Marcus had seen that look before in war zones, when someone had already decided, "You were the enemy before. You spoke a word." She demanded to know what he was doing, her hand resting casually near her holster. The street was empty. No witnesses, no noise except the hum of her idling car. Marcus explained calmly that he lived 2 blocks away and had just finished work. But she wasn't listening. She circled him like a predator testing the ground before a strike. Then came the accusation. A burglary had been reported nearby, and he fit the description. It was the same vague phrase black men across the country had heard for decades, a net cast wide enough to trap anyone. The officer wanted. He offered his ID, his work badge, even the medical supplies in his bag as proof of who he was. But proof didn't matter. Backup arrived. 2 more officers stepped out, their eyes flicking between Marcus and Whitfield, reading the unspoken signal. Without warning, they cuffed him right there on the sidewalk. The cold steel bit into his wrists, and the humiliation burned hotter than the fear. Neighbors peeked from their windows, but no one came out. Marcus was shoved into the back of the squad car, his protests drowned out by the slamming of the door. At the precinct, the questions weren't about his alibi. They were about his past, his neighborhood, his type. Every answer seemed to feed a narrative they'd already written. Hours later, when they finally let him call someone, it wasn't a lawyer he reached, it was his sister, her voice breaking as he explained. By then, the damage was done, an arrest record, mugshots, and the start of a case built on lies. What Whitfield didn't expect was that Marcus wasn't going to quietly disappear into the cracks of the system. He had fought too hard, saved too many lives, and buried too many friends to let this be the final chapter. And when he decided to fight back, the walls around her truth would begin to crack one piece at a time. But first, he had to survive the trial she was determined to win. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. Marcus sat at the defendant's table, shackled more by the weight of lies than the steel around his wrists. Across the room, Officer Whitfield took the stand, confident, polished, rehearsed. Her voice was steady as she painted him as a dangerous man lurking in the shadows, a suspect who matched the description too perfectly to ignore. Every word dripped with certainty, and every nod from the jury felt like another nail sealing his fate. Then came the evidence, or rather, the lack of it. No fingerprints, no stolen goods, no eyewitness placing him at the scene. Just her testimony. Just her badge. In that moment, Marcus realized how fragile truth became when filtered through power. His attorney pushed back, revealing inconsistencies in Whitfield's story, but she never flinched. She looked the jury in the eyes and told them that sometimes gut instinct was enough. The words echoed like a verdict already written. Marcus's stomach twisted as he caught sight of his sister in the gallery, her hands clenched, her lips trembling as if she was silently willing the truth to break through the walls around them. And then it happened. A surprise witness, a quiet man in a work uniform, stepped forward. He had been walking his dog the night of the arrest and had seen everything. Marcus standing under the streetlight, Whitfield confronting him, no burglary in sight. His voice was calm but unshakable, each sentence cutting through the lies like glass breaking. The jury leaned in. Whitfield's composure cracked, her eyes darting toward the prosecution table. Marcus felt his heart pound, not with fear this time, but with something dangerous to his enemies. Hope. This wasn't over. The verdict came back in less than 2 hours, not guilty. Marcus exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. The charges were dropped, the lies exposed, and Officer Whitfield faced an internal investigation that would haunt her career. But victory didn't feel like celebration, it felt like survival, because while Marcus walked out of that courthouse a free man, he knew freedom came with scars. Nights were restless, sleep interrupted by flashes of handcuffs, cold steel, and the sound of a cell door closing. Neighbors who once waved now looked at him differently, not with distrust, but with the awkward awareness that injustice had happened on their street and they'd done nothing. Marcus went back to his clinic, but he carried more than his medical bag now. He carried a story, a warning, a truth that too many tried to deny. He began speaking at schools, community meetings, anywhere people would listen, telling them how quickly an ordinary day could become a fight for your life when your skin made you a suspect. This wasn't just about one false arrest. It was about a system that could have buried him if a single witness hadn't spoken up. A system that had done the same and worse to countless others, whose names never made the news. Marcus's story ended with freedom, but not everyone's does. And the question that still hangs in the air, the one that should haunt us all, is this: how many more lives will be shattered before we decide that a badge is not a license to destroy them?